I believe it will be an excellent, outstanding, and very rare presentation for us. Please, a round of applause to welcome him.
好，谢谢。我客套话就不说了。
Thank you. A few years back, I met Power. I said to him, "You need to use your power to spread the influence of team model." My name is Super. So Super and Power need to work together. Together we are superpower. I used 20 minutes to talk about different frameworks. We'll start from team-based learning, the smart education framework, to PBL, the PBL framework. So today, of course, we'll focus on the development of professionalism of teachers from PBL. I focus on that. It's a kind of training. It's idea, it's a mission, it's not a technology. It is not a teaching ideology, but a learning idea. So you see that from teaching, we go to learning. Why do we teach? We want them to learn, want students to learn. And it's focused on learning. So we focus on learning instead of teaching. Now we're separating different frameworks. After I met Power, I found that we have a different view in terms of the frameworks. We're from different frameworks. But I saw a great opportunity for the two frameworks to merge together to become more powerful. Here we talk about learning, and we focus on students. Of course, teachers are of great importance and influence for the students. More than often, learning can be passive, even in universities, colleges. Trust me, I've been teaching in universities for years. Also, we see interactions. It means that we've jumped from passive learning to interactive learning, and some part of it to active learning. And there's 1 mile missing. That is self-learning, which means the students manage and take responsibility for their own learning progress. It is never easy. So I put it frankly that for elementary school students, you want them to self-study. It's good already if they're active learning, but if you want them to self-study, to manage their own study, is difficult. But I think for senior high school and above, they need to learn to self-study. And in university, they should not be passive. But today, we're still seeing a lot of that in universities. Many places still lack interactions. You see the teachers sitting behind the podium and just talk to the slides. You can ask the university students if it's common. For me, I know it is. So this is really important that we need to not only talk to the teachers, but also change the recognition and ideas about learning of the students. Some students don't really have an idea about education. They just let their teachers do whatever to them. So the teachers usually use the teacher-based education activities. Teachers' professional development. 12 years back in Taiwan, I already started it. It was called faculty development. We just got started. For medical schools especially, we use CFD, Center for Faculty Development, CFD. In the Chinese Medical University in Taiwan, it is the first medical school in Taiwan to develop that. So I was the director of the center, and I worked there for 8 years as the director until I retired. So it's the teacher's development, not the education's development, because teachers actually have many roles. As you can see, they have a professional role here. The professionalism includes the practice and the mission. It's more than just teaching and talking with the slides. Alright, we can say that now you're all teachers. Have you heard of outcome-based or problem-based education or project-based education, inquiry-based education, and so forth? There are many different ideas. Or team-based, that is just one of them. What's the difference between team-based and task-based education? So we have these keywords, and we want to test and check how much our teachers or educators understand or know about that, and how would they put that into practice in the classroom. So it also includes the grasp of technology and the teaching methods. We know that it's important that we grasp or know how to use technology well. For the professionalism of the teachers, it's not just about teaching, and also about curriculum design. 10 years ago should be very different from now. The technology, the design, there must be changes. And how much does the teacher really involve in the design of the class? And the fourth item is the research for education. That is for you to identify your problems and so as to improve your teaching quality. And it also includes the reading of journals. How much time do our teachers read the journals outside of the classroom? And the fifth one, when we talk about professionalism, it also includes personal growth. That's the personality development. So the 5 elements should be included for faculty development. Since we have less than 20 minutes, now 15. So the idea of education is very important. And in this idea, I will focus on one thing that is really comparatively unfamiliar to you, PBL. PBL stands for project-based learning. We use that very often. It could also be problem-based learning. It's used a lot in professional education and higher education. Today we talk about problem-based learning. Project-based would be similar to team-based learning. That's not what I'm talking about.
Today we mentioned Socrates, so we provide Socrates here, Confucius, Socrates and Confucius actually was born in similar times, and they represent different approach. Socrates, for example, is a teacher-centered teaching methods. And the approach that he adopted is a teacher-based approach. So, for example, when he encounters someone, he will ask the questions and then teach someone and teach something to someone. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, Confucius adopted a student-based approach. He had many students. Rather than giving a lecture to hundreds of people, he preferred to have discussions with 2 or 3 students at a time. One of his famous saying that among 3 people, there's always something that we can learn from each other. Of course, in his classic, he gives a lot of different concept about learning process. In modern times, they emphasize a lot on teaching as well. One of them emphasized on public education, the other one focused on scientific and medical education. And on the right-hand side, he emphasized Flexner mentions everything is evidence-based. Everything have to be based on evidence. Because, for example, now many information online are fake information or misinformation. So it is important to be careful and to review everything you can search or you can access online. You need to search for the best evidence, and that's the medical education that we have now. When we later on talk about PBL, you need to learn by action. You need to look for the best evidence. When we talk about education, there are different kinds of students, of course. Some people are gifted. They have the gift, they have the talent, and some students learn in the process. And some students only learn when they encounter problems. And there are also students they do not learn even though they encounter problems. Most of the students are the second or third ways. People want to learn, or people want to learn when they encounter problems. So they have different motivations and they have different learning attitudes. You need to think about what kind of students you encounter and then come up with an appropriate strategy for them. You need to think about their motivations. Why do they want to learn? Why are they learning? Do they need incentives? So you can actually, if you need outside or external incentives, maybe your learning process will not be that proactive. For example, now we have a lot of technologies, we have the best teachers, but sometimes students matter as well. You will also encounter problems if you do not use the appropriate methods to certain type of students. You need to select your methods based on what kind of students you have. Some people may score well in exams, but they do not have practical skills. Some people may not perform that well in exams, but they have a lot of practical and critical thinking. So how do you select your students? Do you select students by exams? That's a normal situation. That's a common situation. If you select students based on exams, you will get a lot of students who can memorize well and who can perform well in exams. However, if you are selecting students based on their motivation, you will be able to learn, you will be able to receive those students that can motivate themselves and they can learn autonomously. So if you only select students based on exams or on their scores, you overlook their ethics or morals, you may encounter problems during the learning process. These are different stages of learning and education in our lifetime. You start with kindergarten and move on to primary school, middle school, college, and then society. So from the age of 15 to 30 is actually the best time for people to learn, and you will actually form their personality and their character. If you do not teach them well or do not have the opportunity to learn, it will have consequences to their lives. So, for example, when kids were young, they can learn from games. But if you move on to college and society, you are learning for practical purposes. You learn to apply. So there are different ways of learning and different concepts to facilitate and enable learning process. Traditionally, we had lecture-based learning. This kind of model may work when children were young. However, as they grow up, now they have smartphones, they have tablets, they have all different information sources. Now we need to move on to team-based learning. You can have more engagement and interactions. But if you want to give them skills to learn autonomously and manage themselves, you need PBL. And that's why from middle school onward, you should give them skills and capabilities to learn by themselves and learn autonomously. So for example, after 30 years old, you may have 50 more years to learn by yourself and learn on your own. This is the history of education over the centuries, starting from agricultural world to industrial world to now we are in a knowledge-based economy and digital-based economy. When knowledge generation skyrockets, we are trying to transform ourselves and so transform education. You can see that over the 2,000 years, you will see a gradually increase in knowledge generations. But in future, you will see obviously skyrocket and uptick in knowledge education. So students cannot just learn everything from teachers. We will have a large amount of knowledge available around the world and from different sources. How can students learn in different ways? We start with learning by ourselves and learning with team members, learning in small group of people. And we can have large group of people in the same room, and we have smart classroom to enable team-based learning. So it is important for us to know the differences between different categories. I only have less than 1 minute left. I have already given you the key points. So even though we have to stop now, you still got the key points already. So you need to start to transform students from passive to self-directed.
你要从这里跑到这里，需要一种新的模式去做。这个要灌输。
So you need a new model to learn knowledge by themselves. So if they can learn self-directed learning process, they will be able to learn autonomously. If they can learn by themselves and learn autonomously, it will become a student-centered process. In the past, students will have to listen to our instructions, but in future, we want those students to learn by themselves, to enable self-directed learning process. So PBL and TBLs are important because they integrate a lot of the technologies into the process. So PBL is a paradigm shift. It's not really about technologies or not really about skills. It's actually about the concept and the idea you have. As long as you have the right concept and ideas,